Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. In this week's show, we're going to recap Raw Grappling 2, the Honor Submission Challenge, and we're also going to recap a little bit of the UFC Fight Pass Invitational 2. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, joined with the co-host,
Zach.
How you doing, Zach?
Pretty good. A little tired today, but
so yeah, volume's going to start low, and I have to edit it halfway through the show as you get warmed up.
Standard.
So before we get into the recap section of the show, a little bit of news, a little bit of ADCC news that is very quickly approaching us. Andy Varela got announced for under 77 kilograms.
Yeah, awesome choice. He looked good in trials.
Yeah, we'll talk about him a little bit this weekend on the UFC Fight Pass, but
yeah,
dude looked amazing in trials.
And I mean, the Fight Pass thing, it kind of sort of makes you feel confident that he should be in if you didn't before. You know, he looked great at Fight Pass. But then I think it makes sense even just based on his trials performance. He was exciting. He had exciting matches. He was very competitive. It makes sense with his history. Really happy with the choice.
Yeah, it's a great choice. So for now, we have a full 77 kilo division. We got JT Torres, we got Renato Canuto, we got Lucas Lepre, Michael Galvao, Davi Ramos, Dante Leon, Cade Bertolo, Lachlan Giles, Nicky Ryan, Roberto Jimenez, Tommy Langecker, Oliver Taza, Andy Varela, Kenta Iwamoto, William Tackett, and PJ Barch.
It's awesome.
Dude.
This looks so good.
This
is actually one of my favorite ADCC brackets that we've seen in a long time because, you know, we've been seeing a big shift in professional jiu-jitsu toward younger guys really dominating, right?
No country. I've been saying it for a couple of years. No country for old men.
Yeah. And this ADCC, we're going to get to see, you know, people that have been around for a long time and dominant, you know, Lucas Lepre's in here and has been around for like 20 years.
Yeah.
That's an exaggeration. But like he's been around forever. It might actually be close to 20 years.
Yeah. Davi Ramos. It's like we got a couple of guys that are older and experienced and like previous champions and like been on the level for a long time. We have a lot of dudes that are like under 25.
Yep.
And you're like, oh no, this is Zach. We got old.
I've been.
And it's just, and again, that's Varela getting in was a guy I'm super happy that he got it. We just found out a couple hours ago.
Yeah.
Like his performance at trials, if you have not seen it, go back and watch it. I love dudes that are giant for their division. Varela's a beast of a man. He's the biggest guy at 77 that we saw at trials that made it to day 2.
Yeah. He's probably walking at 190. Easily. 195
easily. Like dude's big. We have Barch in there finally, but like Varela's run at trials was just like, it was impressive because he was so aggressive and he had aggressive wrestling. And we saw that a little bit on this weekend's for UFC Fight Pass for the UFC Invitational, but like super happy with that division. That division is going to be nuts to preview when we get brackets out at ADCC. And I can't even imagine. There's like 6 front runners for the division.
Yeah.
Which is like,
it's a lot. It's going to be an exciting division. I mean, every division at ADCC
half
this year is going to be exciting.
The guys in this bracket, if you in 6 months tell me, oh, they won the division, I'd be like, yeah, that. Sure. I have no. Like, I'm not going to argue with you at all. Yeah, that probably happens.
Yep. It's anyone's to take. It's going to be an exciting matchups. It'll be really nice to see in this bracket in particular, the old versus young dynamic is going to be really interesting.
I'm super excited. Like, what are the veterans going to do? I'm just pulling through ADCC. What are the veterans going to do that like the young guys are going to have to contend with, or what are the young guys going to counter some of the veterans with? We're going to see like an understanding of the rules that's going to be better or worse based on like how younger guy is or where his coaching is or the tutelage he is from. I am amped. So that's big news. We don't have a ton of other news this week. I think we talk about Gary Tonin going to 66. I think we actually missed that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
I talked about it. I think off air.
Yeah, we definitely talked about it in the chat for sure. But
I think he has a better shot at.
Yeah, it makes more sense.
That division we just talked about. Him going to 66. Like there are 5 guys in 77 that are like there's not a realistic, repeatable ways you can beat that guy. Yeah. Like on any given day, like I don't know how you beat JT Torres. I don't know how you beat Michael Galvao. I don't know how you beat Cade Bertolo. Like those 3 guys, I'm like I don't have a game plan that repeatedly beats those.
But, you know,
at 66, there's a lot of guys that have had more losses. They're like, okay, well, you put the guy here. Yeah. He is beatable. He's winnable. I think Gary moving in that division gives him a much better shot versus a couple of guys. I'm like, I don't know how you would. I don't know how you deal
77
with 77
seems like a deep. I mean, 66 is a deep bracket too, but I think it's more winnable for Gary at 66.
It has more guys that play heavier to a specific style.
Sure.
That if you cannot get out of that, they're going to crush you. But if you can put them out of that,
You have a chance.
you have a chance. At 77, the guys are like bulletproof everywhere for everyone. And then 88, most guys are pretty, it kind of the
Also,
curve.
He can't go to 88. I mean, he could go to
Yeah.
88, but
Right.
it would be hard, I think, for Gary to end up at 88 and perform well
No, I'm
size-wise.
just saying, like the bell curve of like
Oh, yeah.
the dynamic and the differential of skill that we see, and like the collection of techniques that are used at 66 versus something like 80. It's just they are different in different ways because of people are bigger.
Yep.
So, do we have any other news? I think that's the
that's it.
only news. We're going to have probably more and more ADCC news as we get closer to ADCC. We're probably going to have some more dropouts. I think there's a couple more invite slots left.
Not many, but there's a couple.
But I think there's like
a couple at
3 or 4.
at like ultra heavy or what?
Yeah,
99.
I don't
plus.
remember. I know we're like most
a
divisions
couple.
are either probably 15 or most divisions are 14 or 16 or
Yeah.
16 people now. So we have maybe 1 or 2 left. Again, I'll pull it up probably next week or the week prior.
Yeah.
We'll pull it up and kind of give us a better picture. We'll probably do on a slower week a big preview show of like, here's what we got so far, a couple of months out, knowing that it'll change. But
Yeah.
just give us a chance to talk about a lot of stuff that we've been kind of pontificating about for the last 6 or 8 months
Yeah.
now, and then get that out of the way so we can approach the brackets with kind of fresh eyes and then already have some of those thoughts out.
Yep.
So
Makes sense.
that does it for news. Zach, what do you want to start with this week as far as the recaps?
Let's start with Raw. I think Raw was an exciting
That was fun.
set of fights, you know?
And again, super fights are easier to. We've had a couple of weeks in a row of like complex brackets and ways, and Raw was just regular super fights.
It's
and it was
easiest to cover.
Easy to pay attention. So we'll start off with that, and then Zach, you'll hopefully wake up a little bit, and we can get into the spiciness that was some of the other events. Moving on, Raw Grappling 2. What do you want to start with this one? Do you want to start with the Hulk match or the Pato match?
Let's start with the Pato match.
Okay. Diego Oliveira takes Ethan Crelinsten to a decision.
Yeah, and so the important thing about this is a unique rule set. It's their rule set.
Yeah.
Which the way that this runs is that there is a 12-minute round of submission only, no points, nothing.
Yes.
Then a 3-minute pointed round.
Is it 3 or 2?
2. 3 or 2. I think it was 3, but
Okay.
it might be.
I watched
short.
this with some of the buddies at the gym and watched it, took some notes.
Yeah.
Do not have a note on that.
Either way, it's a very short period of time, which
Yeah,
is
it's like a golden score period.
People at this skill level don't often score on each other when they have 10 minutes, and so like a 3-minute scoring round is challenging. I think we saw a lot of when things went into overtime. There was this 3-minute round where either no points were scored or in this case it was 2 quick sweeps back to back, so it was 2-2, and then went to judges' decision. So like that's how the rule set went. It's very basically.
I actually
only.
really do like golden score at the end. If it's really like there's no really rule set that does I think what I would like to see, but I like that if there's no definitive like score or something like that at the end of a match, you give them a couple more minutes to like, hey guys, you want to win it, get something, make something done.
It makes sense.
So
I think often it doesn't.
It's hard to implement in a
it's not
way that
implemented
makes
in the-
sense.
Yeah.
And
It doesn't actually play out the way that you want it
Right.
to. Where like what you want to happen is these two guys like, okay, you got 3 minutes, go all out.
kind of like what ADCC does. It's like your first overtime is like, hey guys, do you want to win it right now? And ADCC's and the guys are like, I want to win it right now.
Yeah.
And then they go and they win it.
Sure. Yeah. And so so that's the rule set, which is relevant here because we do have an overtime match.
Yeah. And it even sweeping, so it does go to decision. But in the match itself, I enjoyed the dynamics of this match a ton. These are 2 guys that are in ADCC.
Yep.
And so as we get, so keep in mind, if in the next couple of months, we are going to have some guys from ADCC that will continue to stay active. Some guys always do it. Certain guys decide to not do it and don't stay active because they don't want to keep in training. They don't want to get injured leading up to ADCC. ADCC historically does not do rematches, if they can avoid it, unless they are in the finals.
Yeah.
So some of these matches we're going to talk about the next couple of weeks, it is very interesting because these are matchups that we will probably not see. These guys are now
We bracketed
on the
opposite
other
sides.
side of the brackets. And so you keep this in mind as you look at ADCC and as you look at these events, because if you do it correctly and you have a good memory, you can pick the bracket the week before the event. Usually you can get pretty good. Mo actually talked about that last ADCC, he goes, look, 66, I think it was 66, he goes, there's only two ways you can make that bracket with how ADCC does bracketing. So if you're smart, you can figure it out. And we in the chat, we're like,
it's also, it might be a strategic decision on some of these guys' matches that if I don't want to see someone in the first half of the bracket.
And I know, and that's the
maybe
question.
I take a match
we're getting into like an overarching sport like league thing. And I really like that some of those tactics are like, oh, we're in a league now where it's like guys are going to meet each other in a big finals event, or they're going to bracket like this, so I'll fight this guy in 6 weeks, and then they're probably not going to have a rematch. So it's I don't think anyone's gaming that now, but I think in the next decade it will absolutely be something that we will see happen in the sport.
And then maybe ADCC changes the way they bracket things, because once it becomes predictable, you can do things like that to game it. But either way, I don't necessarily think that is what was happening here. I think it's a good fight for Ethan to take. He's coming off of surgery. This is his first match in 2022.
No,
after
combat jiu-jitsu, like 3 weeks ago.
Oh, I forgot.
You don't count that.
I don't count combat jiu-jitsu, and so I completely forgot that happened.
Right.
My bad. Yeah, you're right. That there
first jiu-jitsu match that's not combat jiu-jitsu.
First non-slappy jiu-jitsu match.
Right.
And it was a good match for him. And it was really interesting. I think if you're interested in watching a match just for specifically looking at leg entanglement, safety, and dynamics, this is a great match for it, because there was a lot of interesting leg play that, both guys just seemed like they wanted to be playing that game. And
I also love too, the thing that kind of stood out to me was very much like the Keith Krikorian and Ash Williams match. At Grapplefest was both guys willing to play into the legs and also willing to let each other like get in a little bit to try to counter their offense. So it's not that sometimes when two guys want to play legs, it's I will be the only one playing legs here. You cannot play legs. Yeah. And if you have two guys that are doing that, it leads to this outside, like double-seated open guard where no one really bites on anything. I really appreciated both guys here because both of them were letting the other start an entry so they could counter.
Ethan was scaring me a little bit because he was clearly trying to play a reactive counter game when it came to the leg entanglements. And so he was doing that so much so that there were moments where he was just sort of standing.
There were two heel hooks that he like pulls out of, and I went, you were fine there, but you are way more comfortable than most guys at this level.
It was impressive. Yeah. It was an impressive level of comfort and calmness that he had, which we've seen from him always. But he was so aware of what was happening and playing a really beautiful. I specifically remember thinking that Ethan's defensiveness in the entanglements was incredible. He was timing things correct and defending when he needed to, not worrying about things when he didn't need to, and it was actually really impressive.
We have just started to see this, I think, in the last year. Guys, super high level guys, are now calm in these positions, and they have gotten so good where it's like a guy crawling up into high guard or high, something where it's I know what you can do here. I'm not worried about the offense that you can throw here because I know exactly what it is. I know how to defend it. Leg locks and these entanglements have become positions, and it's not submission's around the corner. It's I know where he has to go to get a submission. I can now play this like a position, and it's something I didn't ever really consider being a thing. I knew people would get comfortable in them. I just never really thought that a lot of these open-seated guard and outside leg locking positions, inside leg locking positions would become positions that guys worked from and worked counter offense from, not frantically and feverishly.
Sure. I kind of thought that that's what we were all working towards.
I never thought it would be that good.
Yeah.
I just didn't think the level would ascend to that point where guys weren't worried about getting their shit blown in half.
Sure. I mean, yeah. But we're here now.
We're here now in a big way.
Really, and so that was largely the match. They were playing a lot of these entanglements. Ethan was, when they weren't in an entanglement, Ethan was standing and baiting Pato into the entanglement, and Pato was biting on it, and Ethan was playing counter games off of it. No one really got off anything too crazy in terms of there were no submissions where I thought oh shit, that one was really, really close.
Yeah, he had to eat a little bit
There was a little bit of selling it here and there with something, and there was a couple good bites.
It was never, you never saw somebody grimace and turn or do a motion you never saw a quick reaction to something that was in danger. You saw, I got to address that, pull the foot out, but you never saw, oh shit, I gotta abandon what I am doing to get out of this, it was like, oh, I have to counter that. I have to get away
Yep.
from that. And then I'm immediately back into what I was doing. I'm not, I need a second to get back into the position. You had none of that in this match.
And so this goes into overtime after that. And so like it was on one hand, it was maybe not an exciting match because nothing like dramatic happened throughout.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you have an understanding of how the leg entanglements work and you want to see like really high level play back and forth, it was a really exciting match. So it's, this one threads a needle on that a little bit. But
we're starting to see more of that,
sure.
and I appreciate that from like a student perspective. Because you can now watch these matches and go, like it's at a speed where you can sit and watch it and not just go, he's pulling his leg out. Like no, he's turning his leg to the side and he's sitting here, and you can go, I see what position he's in, and now they're moving, and it plays like jiu-jitsu now.
And then this goes into overtime. This is the case where I think that Ethan gets a really nice, Pato gets a really nice sweep. He pulls guard, gets a really like a nice sweep, and then there's a bit of a scramble.
Right?
Yeah, I think it was single leg axe. Then there's a little bit of a scramble, and Pato ends up at the end of the scramble pulling guard, which I think was just a tactical. I mean, it's hard to say, but it seemed a little bit like a tactical error because if he had just stayed on his feet and waited a couple more seconds, he would have been up 2 for the initial sweep, but it also wasn't super clear that the initial sweep was scored.
Right.
And so if the initial sweep wasn't scored, it makes sense for him to pull guard. So it was a confusing exchange, and it all happened very fast. And so
I mean, there was a sweep, there was a double score there in a minute of the match. I think faster than that.
15 seconds.
Yeah.
Like I was actually surprised that they gave the first sweep. And then because of that, I was surprised that they gave the second sweep. So it ended up negating each other anyways. But 2 points scored for each of them for these back and forth sweeps. And then it goes to the judge's decision. They gave it to Pato. I don't know if I fully agree with that. This one's hard to call. I thought that Pato had more... Pato made more attempts that looked like they were real submission attempts. He was definitely the aggressor.
That's what sold it for me in the match, was like looking at Ethan had good attempts. Pato had more like, I am driving and going for this leg in a way that Ethan like didn't have as many of.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I also thought that Ethan looked like he was in control of the match the entire time.
Yeah.
I felt like the match was where Ethan wanted it to be, but also if you have the match where you want it to be and you can't execute, then I don't know what that necessarily means. So it was a hard one to call because for me it felt like Ethan was in charge of the pacing and positional exchanges throughout the entire match. Pato was mounting what looked to be he looked like he was mounting the greatest offense at any given time, although neither one really it didn't really work out.
It's a tough one to score. Gotta have to score it. If anyone's gonna lose a close decision, it's gonna be Crelinsten. That's how it goes for him typically. Dude's unlucky. But again, fun. Actually, I really enjoyed the match. It was one of my more interesting matches. I also I really like both of their games, and they're kind of a size that's close to me, so I kind of tend to fanboy about them a little more when they compete. So it was a fun match. Anything else on that match?
No.
All right, moving on to the next match. You want to talk about Ashley Williams versus Thiago Macedo?
Yeah, Ashley Williams looked good.
Dude, he looked in control pretty much the entirety of the match.
Yeah,
and from bell to bell, he put Macedo in a couple of different really tight.
He had
subs.
His first sub attempt was a flying triangle off of Macedo made a weird choice in my opinion.
Made a mistake, a weird choice. Let's go with that.
I don't know. I don't think it was a mistake necessarily. It's not something that I would suggest someone do, but there's all kinds of things that I wouldn't suggest someone do that are correct, But he sort of like bent at the waist and grabbed Ashley's like upper thigh, like he was going to go for a single leg. And then in the process of grab, which is not something I would really ever suggest doing, but wrestling background, that's you get slapped in the face for that kind of shit. It might be a good choice. But then what he did after doing that was he started to drop like he was trying to go into shin to shin. So it kind of seemed like he wanted to get the leg, secure the leg, drop into shin to shin, and then play guard. And as he's sitting his butt down, Ashley realized what the hell was happening and jumped a triangle on him. And it was tight.
I watched this sit in a couple nights. Like this, they called it a flying triangle, and I went, that doesn't even really look like a flying triangle. It looks like he just like pulls guard into a triangle to counter Macedo, and I was like, what was that?
Well, I think it happened all because Macedo was trying to sit.
He was coming to his own guard, and then Ash intercepts the guard sit with a triangle. But it's like, so it would have technically been a flying triangle, but it was like they both pulled guard, and then Ash just pulled guard into a triangle, and I went, that was really neat, and I have never seen someone. But he also, when he sits in, he sits like underneath Macedo, and it gets really tight. And I just, again, I've never seen someone ever pull into a triangle like that. It was something I watched. I was like, what happened there?
I think
it's a triangle.
I think it's a niche thing, and I don't think this is something that you can ever practice. I think this is the kind of thing that you just have to be aware of, and Ashley was on top of the fucking ball for this, because how often are you going to see someone reach down, grab your upper thigh, and then try to sit to a guard while controlling the leg? Like, it's just, it's a very unusual thing for Macedo to do, and Ashley responded in a way that was brilliant.
Yeah, that was,
and
that was one of the coolest moments of the weekend for me. Was that because Instagram spoiled it, and lucky I could just replay it over and over and over again. And I was like, thanks for posting that, Ash. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was, so that was really nice. And then he gets kind of, in my opinion, screwed a little bit here, because Macedo, you don't know what anyone's intentions were, but it looked like he was intentionally rolling off the mat on this to me.
A little bit.
He might not have been. We all do. We all try to get out of submissions in the best way we can, but he looked like he was close. His arms were kind of like loosely flailing, and then he rolled at his hips in the last minute and went way off the mat, and they had to reset. And so it looked questionable to me, but who knows what happens.
You play to the rules. If they are not going to disqualify you for rolling off the edge, and they're going to reset you in possibly a different position, you got to do it. And so So yeah, it was an interesting reset.
So they reset to the triangle, but it was not the same triangle.
No, and that's why I was actually, that was weird to me, because like they were resetting, and then I was like, oh, okay, the ref walked away to like get to their side of it, and then they just went, and I went,
yep.
Oh, were they okay with that restart? Apparently,
it was not half as tight of a triangle.
No,
after the reset, and I mean, actually managed to hold on to it for a while after that, and then eventually Macedo gets out with some really nice defense once they reset the center of the mat. But it was very weird that like Ashley hit this beautiful triangle, sunk it in really deep.
I also feel really weird about resetting guys in a
submission,
because it's just like I always go back and forth on this, and I want to kind of come down hard and like have a hard and fast rule for it, but certain times I'm like, well, you can't restart him in the sub, and other times like, yo, put him back in the sub.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of still figuring out exactly where my line is for it, but I think
in this case they were not in any danger on the fucking cement, and they should have just kept going. And
if you can go ADCC rules, I always think you should go ADCC rules.
Yeah, I think that would have been better.
But ADCC will put you back in a heel hook on the center.
Yeah.
and tell Paul Harris to go.
Yeah, they sure fucking will. So that seems unlucky at the best. It seems unlucky for Ashley on this one. Macedo gets out. Ashley has a second really beautiful series of attacks where he's playing guard. He gets the what are people calling this now? It's sort of a shoulder lock from
Tarika Plata.
Tarika Plata.
Yeah, Tarika Plata. It's not
I'm not talking about the finish attempt that he had.
Oh, okay.
Just the general position. It's been really popular in Nogi for the past couple of years, but it's just like a gable grip around a shoulder from guard. And
yeah,
it's not
like a clamp guard. It's it's killing me.
I feel like there really should be a name for it, but I haven't heard anything that commonly enough people call it.
There is a name for it. It is not something that I hear used frequently.
Sure.
We should change that.
But. Yeah, but it's getting to be a more and more common setup from guard positions in Nogi, and it makes a lot of sense. It's a great spot. It's just a gable grip inside someone's armpit, essentially. And so Ashley gets this sort of gable grip lock kind of position, creeps his legs up over Macedo's back, and then rolls into a face-down armbar, and then from the face-down armbar moves into a omoplata, moves into the Tarika Plata, and then, but the Tarika Plata is like really, really off angle.
And he's up high when he's doing it, and I went
way higher than you would normally be.
The Tarika Plata is something that I don't see enough, and I've never really personally drilled. And so whenever it comes up, the Barato Plata and the Tarika Plata, I always struggle figuring out, okay, where does he have to go? Where does he have to finish? Like whenever guys finish it, I'm like, oh yeah, I see the finish. But it's something when I'm watching that I always struggle to like identify and go, oh, he has to be here. So you said he was high on that for the positioning.
I think he was a little too high, but you know, they were also at a weird angle where Macedo's back was not on the mat in the way that it needs to be to like finish completely. But Ashley does a really nice job recognizing that the position's not secure enough, uses the arm grip as a control point, and then takes Macedo's back off of it.
Yeah.
They end up in the back for a little bit and move into overtime. Points in overtime, nothing scored, nothing substantial happens in overtime, and then Ashley gets it on the judge's decision, which I think was very well deserved.
And he takes the belt here at Raw Grappling, and then in the interview, actually, his interview was really interesting. He talks a little bit about like what he was doing, how he was setting it up, and like again, I really enjoy hearing Ash speak in interviews. I think he always has insightful stuff in his interviews, and
Which is so damn hard to do. I don't know who in our audience has had to do an interview after a fight, but Jesus,
I have interviewed a bunch of people after fights.
You have done the interviewing,
and
but
it is a mixed bag to say the least. And so we did interviews a little bit ago for Copa Elite.
Yep.
And I came back up and I was like, that was a rough interview to do. And Zach went, yeah, I have MMA fights. Those are the hardest interviews ever as a fighter to do because you're exhausted. You got rattled around a little bit, and you have a guy asking you questions. And I went, I've done them enough that I had forgotten that, like, this is just a regular interview for me. I forgot that, like, we are not on even playing field. You just got done doing the thing.
You're exhausted.
I was really conscious of that 5 years ago when we started the podcast and started doing interviews, and I'm like, I need to be more conscious of that now because me, it's like just another interview. Like, no, man, that guy's exhausted. So it is always.
And how
cool.
often do we actually even know what the hell happened in a fight?
Right.
There's been so many times where you'll compete and then go watch the film and be like, that didn't happen.
Like,
what universe is this film from? You know,
those are always fun.
But Ashley is incredible at pulling it together and knowing what the hell happened in his match and giving good interviews seconds after fights. It's actually really impressive, just in general.
It is.
But good match. Ashley looked.
Yeah,
looked incredible.
He looked great at trials for ADCC European trials. These two matches with Keith and this match make me really, really excited to see like the improvements he's made over the past couple of years, and like going into ADCC in under 66, like historically the Europeans have not done great in ADCC, and he's a guy that I'm like, that dude.
He could make it a couple rounds for sure.
Yeah, he could make a run in a way that is not common for a lot of the trials winners in Europe, and I'm like very, very excited to see because again,
especially stylistically for him.
Yes,
he can
he's
pull off subs
aggressive
early.
And he's active and he subs guys, and it's like if you're gonna have a guy, but he's also rounded a lot of the stuff out that we historically have had problems with for some of the European guys going into ADCC. In a way, I'm like, ooh, he is like my European. ADCC pick, and I'm been really excited to see him recently develop and like just show up and look great.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So next match, let's talk about Ffion Davies versus Vitoria Vieira.
Ffion just looking great again.
This was
a dominant performance, we'll say.
To say the least. Ffion, a couple of weeks off of a first world title for a UK grappler.
Yep.
And then I wouldn't want to fight Ffion right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to fight Ffion right now. So Vieira starts this off playing a sort what I often think is a pretty risky game. She's double grabbing Ffion. So Ffion pulls guard, and then Vieira starts double grabbing ankles, like two hands on one hand on each ankle. And I always think of this as a pretty, like, it can work really well, but also there's a lot of risks involved because you have to bend over in a way that puts you off balance, and both of your hands are occupied, and it just always seems like
I really like this as an opener for someone seated. If I don't want to step in the middle of their guard and try to like blast through them, if I'm like really hesitant about their guard, I actually do favor this way of kind of starting a match. And it made a lot of sense. I was like, because Ffion has an amazing guard, great sweep game. She can get your back so easily from that position. I'm like, well, her playing an outside game initially.
Oh, I think the outside game makes sense. I have a lot of reservations against the two hands on two ankles, and it's specifically for what Ffion does here, and so like this sort of supports my concern with this opening position. And so because both hands are occupied and Vieira's very heavily leaned over, Ffion grabs one of her hands that's on an ankle and arm drags her, jumps up in the air onto her back, and like Vieira can't respond because she's too far leaning forward. Because
you're bent over and leaned over.
So focused on those ankles. And so Fion's able to arm drag and jump up onto the back, and then attacks from there.
For a good while.
But she flips back and forth between having her back and mount.
Yeah.
And
which is something we're starting to see a lot more frequently.
Yeah,
in Nogi especially.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think people are rolling to defend. It makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
and people on top are.
Well,
I think we're seeing a lot more mount than we have in the past.
Absolutely. We're seeing a ton of mount, and we're also seeing. We are not seeing people in top position or back position getting turned over into the guard at the frequency that we had in the past.
Oh no, people are better at floating around.
Yeah, we see this later when we talk in the show with Mica Galvao.
Yep.
But like that is something that I've noticed more and more over the last really year, honestly.
Yeah.
That people can float the mount and not get turned over into the guard, and they can go back to back mount and go back to mount and cycle through.
Well, I think part of what it was just that historically people have been much more concerned with keeping the back because there was a not weird, I guess, I don't know. There was a period in the meta that lasted a very long time where people were afraid of mount and just kind of viewed it as an ineffective position. And, you know, there was a lot of agreement and disagreement regarding mount for a long time.
And there was a lot of like legitimate discussion about the kind of some of the cons of why people weren't taking mount as much.
And there were legitimate concerns, especially based on how the rest of the meta was working at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a period where people were saying things like mount shouldn't be scored 4 points because it's a useless position, and like
that.
A lot of things were a lot of shit was
people
being talked.
said a lot of stuff, and then we walked it back.
I will say that I was always very pro mount and stand by my choice. But we saw, I think, really the first person that really came out and demonstrated a really effective Nogi mount was Gordon, as happens. I think pre-pandemic 2019, late 18, 19, he decided that he was going to start mounting people and ruining their lives.
I'm going to sit on their chest and make them can't go nowhere.
Right.
And so then he just did, and it was like, oof. That's
right. And then he started getting really good at it. And then from there, we started seeing more and more people start to accept the mount as legitimate positions. We're seeing a lot more submissions coming from mount. And now we have people like Mica, who is, I don't know if mount is his preferred position, but he goes to mount and then definitely wants to stay in mount and will take your back off of it. But it seems like his goal is to be in mount and then finish you from there. And so it's been an interesting progression over time, but we're now seeing mount be an acceptable position. So I think people are saying, okay, what used to be I need to hold the back dearly.
And I'll hold it so long that I will get turned over into guard if it happens.
Yep.
Now it's I'm going to float this over to mount, and then I will float back to the back from there because I can continue to take the back from that position. So.
Yep. And so I think it's just a value of mount changing, and now we see this a lot more. And so these transition periods are getting really interesting. This is what we see here in Ffion's match, that Vieira is flipping back and forth between being mounted and having her back taken over and over again, and Ffion's doing a really nice job keeping the pressure on and attacking subs lightly here and there just to make sure that it
was not really overcommitting position. She's going. You see her kind of go for a sub, and as soon as it's defended reasonably, she goes okay, and she's out of it, and she's back to positional control to then go for another submission,
which is super smart play. And then at a certain point, Vieira starts rolling, and Ffion is it felt like she was waiting for this very particular moment. As Vieira starts to roll, Ffion slides her arm in underneath into Vieira's armpit, collects the arm. By the time Vieira's back hits the mat to where she would be mounted, Ffion has already started transitioning over into the armbar, lays down for the armbar, finishes it really beautifully,
and really crunches through the arm a little bit too. And I freeze framed that and went. And this week we were a couple of guys from the gym were watching it. We went, that
seems like a lot.
And then we saw the Jessica Rose Clark UFC fight earlier the day before. There was also another through the arm, and I was like, man, what is? There's a bunch of ladies that are having rough arms this week. But again, really great finish for Ffion. Very, very dominant, controlling performance. Looking super forward to seeing her in ADCC. Again, seeing her active, seeing her take a break would surprise me in the lead up to ADCC, but looks amazing here. Next match, we had Lucas Hulk Barbosa defeating Thomas Bracher via triangle arm lock from the back. That's what Flo has it listed as.
Yeah.
This one got fucking chippy at the beginning.
Yeah, but it was weird because they seemed like they were going hard on each other, but then also backing up and laughing, and there
was a lot of that this weekend.
It was we'll
get into that on
this felt really weird though. And then after the match, they were very friendly with each other. Everything was cool, but also there was some quote hand fighting for the first 2 minutes, and Bracher was basically just punching Hulk in the back of the head. it was borderline legal.
I would argue it's not. I would argue that the ref let it go because it's a super fight, and Hulk wasn't complaining.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You see, the rules for collar ties are generally the same between wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and those would be legal in wrestling, although borderline. I guarantee that they're legal in wrestling. I've seen way worse than that.
I'm saying in jiu-jitsu, like, I think they're a little... Those for jiu-jitsu, in most organizations, you would have a ref call something for three of those collar ties at least.
They were aggressive. We'll say that. I think that they were legal, but barely. Yeah. But once you're that close to once you're in that gray area anyways, like it's sort of just a judgment call.
And
so
as Hulk's not complaining.
No, Hulk didn't complain.
Hulk's like, I'm Hulk, man. You want to call time me really hard? Yeah. I don't give a shit. I'm gonna keep snapping your head down.
Yeah. So there was that. There was a little bit of like shoving at the edge of the mat, but like in a weird way where there was like a shove and then a chuckle. Like I didn't understand what was happening. It was very confusing.
Seemed not worried about whatever Thomas was gonna do, which is kind of the vibe I got where it's like, hey man, I get that this is a rough matchup. This is kind of the vibe I got. Hulk is a world champion, top of the food chain guy.
Yep.
He is against a guy that is not a world ranked guy right now. And so he's like, look, I'm not going to have any issue with you doing whatever you think you need to do to try to win this match whatever way you can, because you should have every tool in your arsenal available to try to beat me because I am Hulk. I am a monster. And so he didn't really seem like that. Like, look, you do whatever you want to do. I got this.
Might have been it,
But that's kind of the vibe. He was kind of laughing and chuckling. He's like, look, man, I get, like, I don't give a shit. You do whatever you want. I'm so probably going to take you out here. So go for it. Like, I'm not bothered by it.
So, like, that was interesting. But there was also some good, like there were two or three really good takedown attempts from both of them, actually. And this is just a case where it felt like the mats were too small for these two.
Yeah, they had a lot of movement, and they were towards the edge for a couple of different sequences, and there was
even still, there were like at least two of the takedown attempts that I can think of were begun in the middle of the mat.
Yeah.
And just by the nature of you had two big guys aggressively hitting takedowns,
Hulk
they ended up off.
Three big driving steps, and they're off the mat. Yeah. Like that was the one that went to the left side of the mat. I was like, okay, like there's no world in which Hulk finishes that on the mat. But Hulk also, you could tell he set it up in a way where it's like, I don't care if we're on the mat or not. Like I'm going to impose here and show you that I can do this. And a lot of actually Hulk's stopping of this reminded me of that GIF with Mateus Diniz of him at ADCC. Mateus comes in and Hulk just kind of like shoves him and like pushes him back. There was a lot of that like control and off timing of just like pressure into stop a shot and stop forward pressure that when Hulk is like feeling himself and really confident, we see from him. Where it was like, oh, you have like a defined forward stance, you're not overextending, you're ready for someone to come really hard into you and like to redirect and just like be Hulk and stop them. Yeah. And I really like seeing that close to ADCC for Hulk because like that's the Hulk that I like seeing in Nogi, where it's like that is how he is playing, and
that's the version of him that has the best chance at ADCC.
Absolutely. And Gordon, it's funny hearing Gordon speak so highly of Hulk in interviews.
Or anyone. But specifically Hulk.
But specifically Hulk, because he always goes like, had I not been there, Hulk would have won. And just like, that's a weird thing for Gordon to say, especially because Hulk's Atos. And it's just, it's very funny. Like, when Gordon says something about it, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to really pay attention to how good your Nogi game is. Again, it's Hulk, you do, but... That in my head resonates a little differently where I'm like, I'm going to watch what you're doing because Gordon's giving you props. He doesn't give guys on his team very many props. And so...
Matt felt a little too small for these two. There were some really nice takedown attempts that I think were technical, just ended up off the mat because it just did. Eventually, Bracher sits guard and is looking to invert into a leg, and Hulk's just not having anything to do with it. Like, he's defending pretty easily the entanglement attempts and just doesn't want to be in the leg entanglements with Bracher, and I think that's a smart move. Eventually, he inverts, and then Bracher inverts, trying to grab a leg, and then is forced to belly down, or else Hulk was going to be able to pass, and Hulk grabs the figure four around the thigh and starts trying to go for the spadal or truck, whichever you want to call it.
Well, it's like, and I knew he wasn't going to. I think the commentary said he was going to truck, And I was like, there's no fucking way Hulk
I
is
think
going
he
to go.
reached for it.
There's a back take off the truck. And I was like, Hulk is not going to go for the truck. He is going to go for that back take that makes a little pit stop to where you could set up a truck or where you could set up a twister.
Yeah.
And I was like, Hulk's not going to do either one of those things. He is going to bread and butter, bolo, truck variation you over, and then take your back.
And that's what he did, yeah. He did a nice job. He didn't grab the truck. He grabbed the far arm instead.
Yeah,
and
which made it look like that set up for that twister.
Yeah.
Off the truck.
And then he was able to use that arm to climb up to the back. He gets to the back pretty nicely. There's a little bit of body triangle, a little bit of hooks, a little bit of turtle, and then he flattens him out. Ends up back in the back and then grabs the backside Kimura, which we see again later in the honor. We see this backside triangle happen again, and then is able to finish the sort of twisting joint lock or twisting arm lock Kimura from
usually
that back
when a
triangle.
triangle from the back, you're not finishing the triangle from the back unless guys are like sitting up and they'll grab the leg of the opponent. They'll like lift over their own body and like grab the leg. That's really the only time it's finished. 90+% of the time, it's usually the arm because the arm is in such a hard, you can't pull it back in to defend it, and so unless it, Branch does a really good job here of actually grabbing like over Hulk's thigh. That was different match. That was a Mica Galvao match. Yeah, I mixed them up.
It's two very similar.
It's
finishes.
weird to see two triangles from the back in the same weekend. It's just like, oh yeah, and it's.
I actually had to write down which one happened specifically because I was like, I'm going to confuse these two if I just.
And I didn't write it down and I forgot. So again, Hulk looked
good.
like Hulk looks when Hulk's on. Yeah. Again, I'm super excited to see. I hope we see this Hulk in a couple of months at ADCC.
Yeah, me too.
Any other thoughts on Raw?
No, it was a good event.
Yep, second time we've covered them, and I like again fun, very fun super fights. I like the matching. I like the matchups that they put on here. They were very good matched fights. Moving on to the Honor Submission Challenge 1. I swear we've done Honor before. I don't know.
I don't think I've done Honor with
it says
the show before.
It says it's number 1, but I think they've had an event before, and I don't.
Maybe it wasn't called Submission Challenge because it's Submission Challenge number 1, or we did something very similar to Honor. And either way, this is they're using EBI rules with a 15-minute first round submission only, then EBI overtime to. It seemed like 2 EBI overtimes. Was the most I saw.
Don't remember because EBI overtime.
Yeah, it's wonky.
You kind of flip it.
Yeah.
I don't honestly, not full disclosure here. If events go to overtime, I tab. Because we don't really, but the reason why I do it is because it doesn't really, you start in a position you didn't get in regulation, and so it doesn't really give me any information about, I'll watch if there's a finish, I'll click through and I'll look at the finish, but usually it's like a guy defending an arm or back mount.
Yeah.
I've seen that for 10 years, like there's not...
We've had this discussion a bunch of times. It's a weird rule set based on our opinions of jiu-jitsu. I think a lot of people really like it, but some people really like it.
Yeah.
Some people are neutral on it. I think most of the people on this show are not huge fans of the overtime.
Well, we've seen it before, and I don't think it's a great barometer for good decisions for matches.
Sure.
I'd much rather there be another criteria.
And you see weird scenarios where some people are exceptionally good at EBI rule sets because they're really good at those last positions, and they're good at not losing in regulation. And then that leads to some like weird rules play and things like that. So
luckily, we don't see that here. We see a couple of overtime for this event, but overall,
overall it was...
the guys that are the top best in the world in each of their divisions did quite well.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. Zach, where do you want to start?
Fabricio Andrey and Cicetti.
Yeah. So they ran. We're gonna talk about pretty much the finals matches for these.
Yeah.
We're gonna stop off at a couple of the matches. These were sort of round robin, sort of bracketed style. The first rounds were fun. We're really gonna focus on the finals. But in a couple, and a match with Vagner, match with
just because they had some interesting stuff.
Stuff that's worth pointing out in the match. Fabricio Andrey.
So this is the -70 round robin final.
Yeah.
Fabricio Andrey versus Alessio Sacchetti.
In his first round, he mounted triangles Jack Sear, and then Alessio Sacchetti also guillotines Jack Sear. So Fabricio Andrey and Alessio Sacchetti go into the finals of this under 70 kilogram round robin event.
Yep. And so Fabricio starts with snap down into a chin strap on Sacchetti and It looked good.
We're seeing more and more of Fabricio into the wrestling, like into the really again. We're starting to see him lead up to his ADCC game. I think this is what we're going to see from him in 66 at ADCC.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely the case. So Sacchetti, with the chin strap on, so Fabricio doesn't have the guillotine set in. He just has the chin strap grip, and Sacchetti goes for a single off of it, which is can be kind of risky sometimes. It gives the other person an opportunity to set up the guillotine a little better.
Because if you rise up at all, they can lift up, and that's sort of what happened. Fabricio Andrey does. I loved this transition here because Fabricio Andrey goes from the arm and guillotine. I think this is the sequence you're talking about. Goes from the arm and guillotine, and I loved the camera was low enough on the mat. I like guillotines. If you don't know anything about me, it's like my favorite thing to do in training is that choke. So I love when the camera angle for an event is low enough where you can see the hand fight happening under the body.
Yeah, which is rare to see.
Under Alessio's body, you can see how he's fighting, and you can see how Fabricio is actually switching and changing his hands. So he goes from an arm and guillotine, he switches it from an arm and guillotine to a forearm to forearm guillotine to like a control, almost like you'd loop through for an anaconda or for a darce. And then from that control, he sits up and he goes for just a straight up 10-finger guillotine and sits up. And on the 10-finger, I actually thought he was going to finish because he lifts up really, really high and he does the arch of the back and he gets his chest and shoulders over the back of Alessio. And I was like, oh, that's how you finish it. And then Alessio does a great job fighting the hands, getting out. The 10-finger is a super controlled position there, but if you're able to fight and get your torso away from it, their hands drop and they don't have enough pressure against the neck to finish. But it was a really great sequence that usually for guillotine transitions and sequences, you just can't see the hand fight that's happening. And because I love that position so much, I really enjoy at the top level, like all of those nuanced positions. And going forearm to forearm for the guillotine in the arm in is not something I see a lot of. And I'm making is there a better name for this grip?
Forearm to forearm seems good.
So basically, you're reaching over and you're grabbing each of your forearms like you're shaking your own hand on the forearms. It's not a grip that I see a whole lot of guys use. I think Hanger will use it occasionally for some of his arm in stuff, but it's not a very common transitional grip if you're gonna go for a guillotine. It's something you see like pulls through for darces and for anacondas, but it was really interesting to see him do this from an arm in and then switch it to a 10-finger.
Yeah, it was nice. But Alessio's able to get out. After a little bit of a scramble, drops his body down, like you said, and then there's a little bit of a scramble. Fabricio tried to roll to top mount after he loses a little bit of grip on the guillotine, the 10-finger, and then loses it entirely after this like sort of roll through. I think it was a good last ditch effort after he kind of loosened the grip.
Yeah, he tried to continue and control the position to get to a better spot, and
then off that scramble, Alessio immediately tries to jump a triangle onto Fabricio, and
I was really impressed with this because this actually, for a second there, I was like, ooh, Fabricio actually really has to address this as a submission threat because Alessio was just in that middle ground of like, he very easily can lock everything in and like you're not getting out of that triangle. But Fabricio, if he stays diligent, still has the opportunity to fight out of that middle range triangle. And when we cover pro stuff, these are the most fun sequences for me where it's like, ooh, what's going to happen?
Yeah. But it did land in this mid-range, and so Fabricio was able to sort of straighten the top leg out and then like cut the corner to start passing, and then immediately as he gets past, he grips the arm up. He doesn't waste any time settling into side control.
Because Alessio tries to roll up to go into turtle. He tries to essentially avoid the pass, but Fabricio snakes his arm for the front side arm of Alessio on the arm that is in the top as he is trying to turtle. I did this frame by frame to watch it because I was like, that is a slick transition to escape it and then immediately go to pass and then lift the arm up and then jump over the back with the legs for the arm bar.
Yeah, it was a really nice transition. He's able to finish the arm bar after passing into it, essentially. Right. It was really nice.
The camera's perfect on it, too. You can watch the hand transition.
This whole match, the camera was perfect.
I was really happy with it.
But this was like a 2-minute match of just wild submission. Not wild, but
competitive and wild submissions.
Yeah.
And again, that low camera angle makes this, for me, it makes it so much more enjoyable because I can see exactly what's happening. I'm not like, I'm not like curious. Like I wish I could see his hands. Like but I could see his hands for once, and it was like again, it's uncommon that happens for all of that.
Yeah,
And
it was nice.
Great placement, really great match. Fabricio Andrey, looking like a monster.
Yeah,
No surprise there. Very very excited to see him at 66 for ADCC. All right, you want to do 4-man Mica Galvao, 4-man Pena and Rocha.
Yeah.
Which one do you want to do first?
Let's go Galvao first.
All right, Mica Galvao. His first match, he rear naked choked Jack Tilley.
Yeah, it was pretty standard Mica Galvao stuff at this point.
Jesus.
The dude's kind of a monster.
Just spends 3 minutes on the armbar.
Yeah.
That he does from standing. He flying armbars and does the armbar that you do when you see guys break their own neck.
Yeah, I was concerned that he was going to be be alive after that.
Oh,
but
man.
He basically landed inverted in the armbar.
He landed on the backs of his shoulders, but every year, every other year, we see a highlight go around in the jiu-jitsu community of someone in nogi throwing. There's 2 ways you can throw the flying armbar in nogi. One of which is super dangerous. One of which is a lot less dangerous. They're both good. Of course, Mica Galvao is going to do the one that is it's super dangerous. It's also a little bit faster.
Oh, it's way faster.
It's way faster. So that's why you see him do it.
Requires a lot less
setup
depth in setup too.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to forecast that you're going to
But
do
if you fuck it up, or if the guy pulls out and your weight shifts wrong, you land on the back of your head, which puts all of your body into your neck, which you end up paralyzed because your neck breaks.
Yep.
So he does this, doesn't get paralyzed. I was happy to see him not get paralyzed.
It's the armbar
and then
set up really nicely.
Yeah.
Instead,
he lands on his shoulders and then fights the armbar for like
3 minutes.
For 3, something like that. I watched it live and then went. That was I don't remember how long he was in there. But credit to Jack.
It was a long time.
Like, is this? Yeah, this is Jack.
Yeah, Jack Tiley.
Just guts it out and just good defense. And Mica Galvao is super calm, going for the armbar, but he's not going to overextend.
Yeah.
Not going to overextend. Eventually, though, Jack gets out, and I was like, whoa, I want to watch that because that was
Uncommon.
Puts Mica on his back in the guard, and I went, good for you. That's fucking wild.
Put that on your resume.
Yeah, bro.
Because that doesn't happen for most people.
No.
Yeah. Mike is eventually able to take us back and finish the match.
And that's
finish.
And he gets the back and then pretty quickly finishes with the rear naked choke. But it was this again. It's another Mica Galvao first round kind of technical clinic on submission offense. With some positional work thrown in there. And when I say positional work, I usually mean like maintaining a position for a period of time. I mean like he just decided to do the next thing and move through a position.
Yep.
Wild transition to the back. Just like, God, dude, Mica Galvao he is a breath of fresh air to watch in competitive jiu-jitsu because he is just like, he is trying to sub you in a way that we haven't seen a ton of guys doing in a little bit here.
Yeah.
And he's doing it at the highest level. So let's talk about his final match. Jed Hue, in an earlier match, finishes Omar Emoli with, I always mess up Omar's last name there.
By triangle, though.
Yeah, finishes him by triangle and then goes and faces Mica Galvao in the finals match. And Mica Galvao is kind of more of the same. Just looking like a monster.
So Mica Galvao, so Hugh pulls guard right away here, which is a difference from the first match.
Yeah.
And so Mica gets to play on top a little bit. He does a lot of the high pressure passing that we've seen him do a lot of, his entire career.
And you've been always really complimentary of like the way that he does that. And you would thought that was the big shift.
Yeah, and I still think we're moving that way. We're seeing trials. I think we saw a lot of high pressure passing, and Micah's particularly good at it. And I think we're seeing a shift to that because, I think. Like we were saying earlier, people got really comfortable with leg entanglements, and high pressure passing is a really nice way that if you would prefer to play more traditional jiu-jitsu, pass, go to side control, take the back kind of shit, and you don't want to be in the legs, high pressure passing is a nice way to keep your legs out of the picture and make sure that people can't invert in underneath you. And so I think people that want to play that game are starting to shift their passing to either body lock passing or high pressure passing, or lower high pressure passing to keep their legs out of the picture. And Mica does an extremely good job with his high pressure passing.
He just lays his weight like over you.
Yeah.
It's like over and through you as he's passing, and then he just is in side control, and then he does
one of two things. He either he's like body locking out at the chest almost.
Yeah.
And then using his head to control head direction.
Chin
of
and sort of like your shoulders and chin.
Yeah, and so it keeps your arms out of the picture because they're sort of propped up high above his arms, and then he's got some head control with it, so he's able to monitor the way that you can move your body. And then he also does, the sort of classic Chanji version where he gets a deep cross grip.
Yeah.
And then grabs, from one side of the head all the way behind the neck, behind the back, into an armpit, and then shoulder pressures in with the sort of cross-face position.
Right.
He plays both of those extraordinarily well. And so we got to do that. We saw him execute that high-pressure passing twice really nicely here. The first time, he moves into side control and then climbs up to north-south with double unders, so like both arms over the Hue's arms. With north south it's always confusing because they don't want to call them unders because it's unders in like the traditional sense. My arms are underneath your arms but they're above mine, so it's a really confusing way to talk about these.
It's a north south underhook, essentially, but it's
so
kind of it functions like an overhook because it traps the arms in place, sort of.
I've never really am sure what I would like to call that, but he ends up with this, we'll call it double unders for now, and then does a really nice thing where he transitions from this north-south double unders position into a reverse scarf hold, and so hips facing hips, and then controls that position long enough to transition into mount. It's just like a very textbook way to move into mount.
Super high on the chest and the body, which is what I noticed the whole time. Like he never, and even when earlier matches we've covered Mica Galvao, like he doesn't really spend any time on your hips or like anything below like your rib cage. Like he just doesn't spend any time there. He doesn't engage with that. Like maybe he'll touch on your hips to get past them, but then he is on your chest either in north south or in top, or his hips are on your chest. Like he doesn't deal with your hips.
No, he does a great job controlling the chest and shoulders and head.
Yeah.
And then doesn't probably need to deal with the hips as much because he's got so much good control there that he's able to move himself around. And he's got great mobility in his hips while he's doing that.
He also just floats on you so well. And that's what we kind of saw here. He just floats in mount, and you're not getting him off you. He does a transition here.
Well, the transition, he does some mountain maintenance here that I've never seen before and was awesome.
I was so upset watching him do this because I think I know what you're talking about. This is something that I try to do every time. I have done this like 3 times ever.
Yeah,
it just like to watch him do it versus high level opposition.
So what it is, he's about to get bump swept, really. Like he's not off balance, but he's a little loose on top. Hue times this nicely in a way where Mica's hips are starting to move off the center of Hue, and he's gonna teeter, right? It looks like he's gonna get bump swept. And
back into guard, essentially.
Back into guard, yeah.
Yeah, into his going guard.
And what Mica does is he drops his legs low, figure fours around Hue's legs, makes it so that Hue can't turn to base, and so they are laying both of them on their hips. So Mica does get sort of bump swept over because his hip is now on the mat. Right. Instead of him being knees on the mat in mount, but he also figure forward, like almost Khabib style, figure fours both of Hue's legs, and so Hue can't turn come up
because he's turned as much as he can turn in that position now.
And then Mike is able to post with his hand and reset his hips to back on the center, and then moves up into mount like nothing happened. It was incredible reaction timing.
That's not even the thing I'm talking about either.
Oh, that's something I've not seen people maintain mount that way before, and I don't know if it's something that he's practiced and thought about, or if that was just instinctual, but fuck, it was beautiful.
The transition that I'm talking about is he rolls through chest, mount to back to mount to back to mount. It's like a three or four sequence of that, like in the roll, and he follows the roll for every single of the transitions, and it's like that is not something that people can do. That we don't, like, even at the highest levels, we do not see people consistently not get bumped into their guard when that transition happens.
Or at
and
the
let
very
the guy
least,
spin in you.
Or at the very least, let slip a quarter guard,
Yeah,
I think that's probably the more common
back
thing.
To something. They're either getting back to a guard, they're putting you on the back, they're getting to a quarter guard or a half guard even, but like
he's just incredible at hiding his feet
It's
in a
not
way
something
while floating,
that you do, that you see guys are ever able to do. And it's something that I've tried for years and years and years to be able to like reliably able to do. It's one of those things that you just don't even teach people to do it, because it's like, you're going to get turned. Like, you should be maintaining mount in their back mount or mount in this way, because if you don't, like, you're not going to, you teach people to never try to beat someone in the roll.
Yeah.
And that's what he's doing, but he's doing it from a top dominant position consistently.
Yeah.
And it's like, I specifically teach people not to do that, because you can't, like, I'm okay at the sport we do, and I've never been able to make that work. And he just does it, and seemingly like with ease. Wrong mouse. It's fine. It's all good, Zach. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was an incredible display there of mount maintenance, but Hue actually does manage to regard at one point, which is impressive, because not a lot of people are able to regard from mount with Mica, and so Hue's able to regard, but then it's just another opportunity for Mica to display his incredible passing. He gets past, but this time, instead of taking the time to go to side control, he passes straight to mount and then continues doing exactly what he was doing before. And then the final exchange happens when Mica climbs into, he's going for a topside triangle. So he's going for a topside triangle on,
which we've seen him hit a couple. We saw him hit last weekend at Pecoria.
Yep. And so he's going for the topside triangle on Hue's head and Hue's right arm. Hue responds by rolling, and Mica floats on top of the roll, and then slides the leg that he was coming up. It was going to be the leg that was in the armpit. He slides that over, because Hue has now tucked that arm in to defend. He slides that over top of Hue's shoulder, and then gets the backside triangle on the other arm. So like now Hue's head and left arm. So he like floats up on top while Hue drops his arm and rolls to defend. He takes the space created in the roll to move his leg up and around Hue's head, and then grabs the backside triangle as soon as Hue gets to all fours, and then locks up the backside triangle. Rolls.
And then I watched that match, and we're like, how you like how on earth would you coach someone to not have that?
Like, how do you coach Hue in this case?
Yeah, well, it's like, how do you teach someone in the gym? Like, well, it's like, what are they? Well, Mike can do that.
Yeah.
And you're like, what do you do?
The fortunate thing about this, like, I think a lot of stuff that we're seeing from some of these younger guys are hard to dissect a lot of times, and are really impressive, sort of like semi-instinctual type things that I don't know if I could really, like, you can teach someone, do this thing, but it's going to be hard to, like, implement and practice, and the timing is weird.
To teach them the timing and the pressure maintenance and balance to get that done. It's
but
like,
this is something that I think you can pull. Because this is a common response to the topside triangle. And if you're a topside triangle person, this is a common response that you're going to see. People will protect that arm and they'll roll to the back, because you've climbed up high enough that they can move they can roll their hips and base out.
This did look like a drilled motion that Mica went. It's like, this is something that you look for. I think there was something, we may have seen him do this before.
Yeah, it felt very...
But it's
on plan, and so I think that's what it was, and so he locks in this backside triangle, and then this is the one where Hue actually defends pretty nicely.
Yeah,
catches on with
this is the one where he loops up over Mica's thigh, and he knows that that Mica's not going for. He will take the triangle if he has to, but the arm is such an easier finish, and the arm is behind. What do you call that armbar position when the arm is behind the armpit? Do you have a name for that?
Super dangerous, but other than that, not really.
Because we were talking when we were watching it live, I know it's like a power grip armbar or a shotgun armbar or a guillotine grip armbar, but like that behind the back armbar.
For knee bars, I typically call it guillotine grip, and so I'd probably use the same language there for me personally, but I don't think that there's any like accepted name.
And that was my question. I didn't know, because I call it a power armbar.
Sure.
But I don't actually, or I call it a behind the back armbar, but I hear people call it like a power armbar, or guillotine grip armbar. Yeah. But I realized that we do an audio show primarily with a video component. Subscribe on YouTube if you want to see the video version of the show. I don't have a name. I don't have a specific name to refer for this armbar that Mica eventually kind of ends up going for.
But it's easy in this particular case, it's pretty easy to describe how he gets there, because Hue does a really nice job defending. It's smart. He knows that the triangle is going to be hard to finish, and so he's not so worried about maintaining blood flow, because it's going to be hard. And so hard to finish the triangle from here. So he sort of gorilla grips his hands, so fingers interlocked above his head.
Gorilla grip?
Yeah.
An S grip?
S grip.
You call that a gorilla grip?
I've called it both.
Huh.
I don't know. I think Gorilla Grip I got from wrestling years ago.
Is that what it's called in wrestling?
I don't think so. I don't know. People call it
It's
the same thing. People call it dumb shit.
I love dumb names for stuff. So Gorilla Grip is like a funny. Wow, that's a funny grip.
I don't know why, but so he get S grip, whatever the hell you want to call it. He gets it above his head, and Galvao does struggle with it for a little bit. But what Galvao does is
I don't think struggle with it. Galvao
well, he has to take
knows
his time.
he has time.
Yeah.
And they have the camera on his face the entire time, and I went, that dude looks so comfortable, like just waiting to break the grip here.
Yeah, I guess struggle is not the right word, but he has to address it, which is something for him. And so what he does in this case is because Hue's arms are making a loop above his head.
Hughes
is above his head. And
right.
so Mica takes one arm, he controls the arms in that little loop. He takes one arm and swims it through the center of the loop and then swims his arm around the back of the elbow. And so then once he gets that locked in, he could, if he wanted to, extend his legs out, arch his back, and break the grip and finish that way. But instead, he clearly chose to like be patient with it, to wait it out, and then sort of like inch by inch break the grip.
That was the scary thing. Because I just watched him go like, oh, he can finish this, but he's just going to take his time. You're like, you have a guy in a pro setting in a finals match for money, and you're like, I'm going to control this, and I'm just going to, I know I have the finish, I'm just going to very slowly work to the finish. And you saw Jed like adjusting his arm to try to turn out. You saw Michael just kind of look at the elbow as the elbow kind of spun around and went, okay, here, moved his shoulder back a little bit, and just like finished.
And the thing is, like, it's brilliant. Like, it's the smart way to do things. My like, I think the thing that people would normally do in that position is as soon as you get the arm through, you would extend and be like, I'm gonna fucking break this grip because I've been dealing with it and now it's on. But in doing that, anytime you make these like aggressive, hard
you give the
motions,
person time to counter.
Space and there's counters, and so in this particular case, Mica did not allow that to happen.
Yeah.
It was smart jujitsu.
The confidence in your game. And what's the word I'm looking for?
Wherewithal,
but like what's the word for like patience or like calmness? There's like a word I'm looking for but like in that moment to be that aware of the situation and that calm and just know like, yep, I can continue to methodically address this, and then I will do these steps, and then I will get the sub, and not need to like go through the arm. It is a level of comfort that we do not see frequently, like nonplussed in the finish.
And we definitely don't see from an 18-year-old very often.
Yeah, that's the scary thing. He's 18. I forget. I keep forgetting.
Or maybe 19 now.
18. No, he's still 18.
He's still 18.
He won the world title 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Still 18. Yeah. Youngest world champion ever. So that was again Mica Galvao
doing Mica Galvao shit.
Good luck 77 kilos.
Yeah,
I hope we get him and JT.
That would be so much fun.
Excited for that.
That would be so much fun.
There are like 3 guys, like Cade and Galvao, because he beat Ty. I'm excited about that now. Or JT and Galvao, like those I want to see. I want to see those matches. Maybe Dante and Galvao would be awesome too. They already went to each other, and it was an okay match, but like it's spicy.
JT and Galvao would be a baller match.
Oh yeah. I'm excited. So that was that. Mica Galvao wins that tournament, 4-man tournament. Moving on to a little bit of a weird couple of matches.
Yeah, weird couple of matches here.
Fun matches. I enjoyed them. We had Felipe Pena defeating Manuel Pinto via rear naked choke. Felipe looked fucking good. He hits a really interesting kind of opening, kind of the inside trip that we see JT Torres hit all the time off an arm drag, but he doesn't do it from. He like kind of opens with the arm drag and then just goes, your arm's away. I'm just gonna do it anyway, and just
inside trips and sort of yeets him.
Yeah, to the corner, sort of like, gets him down. And I was really impressed with, again, Pena. This is not the best we have seen Pena look, but things like that are still shades of like, oh yeah, that's a really good, like you didn't have half the arm drag here and just made it work anyway. Like, that's impressive.
Yeah, but outside of that takedown, it was a pretty standard match for.
Gets him down, passes the guard, finishes this one with a rear naked choke, gets the back.
Yep.
Finishes rear naked choke.
Second match in that 4-man. So we're going to talk more about the finals, but the second match in that 4-man was Vagner versus Hugo Borum.
I actually had a lot of fun watching this match. This was
Vagner clearly had a lot of fun in this match too.
I love watching Vagner because Vagner Rocha. If you've never watched a Vagner Rocha match, he will smile at you the entire time and just laugh, and he'll just try to like do all this nasty shit to you.
Yep.
And he'll just, until the ref tells him to not do it, he will just continue to do it. Grab your face, he'll smack you a little bit, like he'll just smile at you, and he gets in your head a lot. If you ever see Vagner stop smiling and look pissed, like those are the Vagner matches where you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Vagner's not playing around anymore. Because like 90+% of Vagner's matches, like
He's
no matter
having a good
what's
time.
happening, he's legitimately like in there having a good time.
Yeah.
And this match was one of those matches where he's just having a good
Yeah.
time, and he looked like kind of shades of the Vagner that we saw at ADCC.
Sure. Yeah.
Like in the speed, he's up. I mean, he's now above 185. You know, he's moved. He is not in the 77 kilos. He's up to 88 kilos. And we were kind of talking initially after ADCC about him. He pretty quickly went up to 85 after the last ADCC.
Yeah.
And we were curious, like he filled into the weight fine. We were all sort of curious, like would he stay at that weight? How would he fill out into that weight? Like what would he look like when he returned to ADCC in 2 years? And like would he continue to fight up in those heavier divisions?
Yeah.
And he has, and we're finally seeing now the guy that we saw at 77 with kind of some of the dynamism of movement now with that additional mass, and he's sort of filled into that weight in a way that we were all sort of curious if he had. And this was one of the first Vagner performances where it looked like Vagner at 77, but just 190 pounds now.
Yeah. Yeah. So
controls the match,
wins
gets
by
on the
rear
back
naked.
twice. He has two really great back sequences. He goes for an armbar the first time, and Hugo's able to defend it really, really well. Wagner laughs after. He goes, "Oh," basically like goes, "Oh, that was close."
Yeah.
And Hugo also goes, "Yeah, it was fucking
And
close."
they get reset to the center of the match.
And then Vagner gets to the back again in a really nice sequence. And this time he's able to actually get. He doesn't get that. He gets a face crank. Like a bottle top.
Yeah, I'll call it an RNC, but
face
it's
crush.
a jaw crush
It
situation.
was a jaw crush on the side where Vagner just goes like everything above the neck is the neck, and just turns and bottle tops sideways, and Hugo goes, I'm gonna tap here.
That's the best way to finish that.
Moving into the finals match here, we had Vagner Rocha and Felipe Pena, and I can describe this match in one word: chatty.
Chatty, very chatty.
They just were. I couldn't really hear what they were saying.
No, it didn't look like they were like. It didn't look like they were talking shit. It kind of just looked like they were having a like a casual old friends conversation.
Yeah,
and
but it got a little heated, a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
But it was playful in like a.
It was weird.
It was weird. It was
weird.
It reminded me of the Mergali versus Ryder match.
Yeah.
Ryder Jerchi. The kind of that where it was like they're talking and you like. And even the ref at one point goes, "Guys, stop fucking talking. Like, do jujitsu."
Yeah. So weird.
Well, let's talk about the technical pieces of the
Pena
match.
Sits to guard immediately, and he was clearly the entire match, all the way through. He was clearly looking to be in single leg X.
He was playing that modified single leg X we saw at Worlds, where it's a
straight ankle lock single leg
It's
X.
a straight ankle, but it's not even a single leg X. It's like an X guard. Because it's not on the same side leg. It's on he puts it leg through on the opposite leg.
Well, he was flipping back between the two.
Yeah, he was
I think he was more concerned with being within the single leg X version of it, but he would switch down when Vagner started climbing in and crowding his hips. He would switch down, but I think his goal was to be in that straight ankle single leg X kind of position.
Yeah, that's where he wanted to kind of keep Vagner away. But I found that, again, I'm finding that particular position really interesting because something is happening there at the high levels. There's a shift in meta where guys are now, instead of playing the X guard above the shoulder or like under their armpit, they're now playing the single leg X like that, but they're playing a long leg across the other leg, and they're switching between the two when historically that has been an uncommon switch for people to make for sustained periods of time.
Yep.
And I don't know where people are going with it right now, but it has been a big shift in the last year.
I've been playing that position a lot lately just because I think that straight ankle position is always really comfortable.
Yeah.
The single leg X in that straight ankle position that's single leg X.
That's how you play it.
But then that straight ankle X guard is a natural progression when people start climbing in, and I feel very often that I have an extremely easy time loading people's weight.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy to load people up playing that X guard with that straight ankle lock. And even in no-gi, really, I mean, like in gi, it's much easier because you can grab cloth and load people in by pulling them in. But even in no-gi, it's pretty easy. Like people are so crowded on you in the first place that it's pretty easy to just grab a hand loosely and give them a little yank to get them sitting their weight down and then load them up for. And I find that a lot of times, and you see, we're seeing this at the top levels too. A lot of times you don't get sweeps off of that weight load, but you get inverted ankle locks, inverted Achilles.
Because they have to commit their weight all of a sudden, and now I can fight off of them committing their weight on that leg there.
Yes.
It's not something that we've seen at the high level at the frequency that we are seeing it at until this year.
Yep,
and this year it has like really. There's something that people are developing in that position that everyone in the community at the high level is going, oh, we're all playing this now.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see. And Pena was definitely playing it. I think, like I said, I think he was more interested in being single leg X, but he was definitely flipping back and forth between the two happily. Wagner was clearly didn't want Pena in those positions, and so, but also, Wagner, I think he developed a really nice strategy about midway through the match. Like, so he was struggling to pass without Pena getting. Inverting on him, and so he got a little frustrated and he started doing a little bit more like sprawl, low pressure passing, which Wagner clearly knows how to do. We've seen him pass like that over and over again, but against Pena, it felt like he was getting to that position, but then not really making the attempt to pass off of it. Like he was sprawling out nicely, he was controlling Pena's hips, but then he wasn't creeping in a nice way, or he wasn't creeping in a way that told me he was really gonna pass.
Right.
He was like maintaining the position there a little bit.
Pena was doing a really good job. He would like frame him out with the topside knee, and he was like, you could tell that Pena was very willing to accept Wagner into the half guard.
Yeah, and that which maybe is why he didn't want to creep in, because he might have just.
But you tell that and that's sort of what I picked up was like Wagner started to have more success in that, but also Pena started to like not like open Wagner up where it's like if he's going to overcommit, I'm going to put him in the half guard and we're going to stay in the half guard. And Pena did a really good job of actually locking Wagner's low side leg down and not letting Wagner consistently get his knee up all the way to start being mobile there and to actually pass.
And that was what I was going to say, is that he started, like, in response to that, Pena started doing what you were just saying, is locking that far side leg down. And then he used that to get Wagner to come in and start trying to pass like he was for the first half of the match. Wagner switches his passing to what he was doing the first half of the match. Pena inverts, grabs a leg, and then we're back where we were for the first half of the match. And so it was this interesting dynamic of like Wagner clearly made a game time adjustment in his passing style. Pena countered that game time adjustment in his passing style to get him passing the way that he was originally, and then started executing the same game plan that he wanted to execute in the first place. So that happens for the first, I don't know, most of the match, actually.
Yeah,
That's
and they're talking, and I'm getting more. Honestly, I actually had a problem. I only watched this once for the notes I have. I don't have as many technical notes because I was so like caught off about why they were talking.
Yeah,
and I was trying to figure that out more so than like technical stuff. I was like, why are they talking? Like, what are they?
Yeah,
they're like, and it was such a weird like casual conversation that we do not see competitors engage in, and I was just confused.
Well, there was even more weirdness here. So Wagner had one like Aoki lock attempt to counter off of Pena's stuff, but like other than that, the first 8 minutes of the match were just this general vibe of what we were just talking about. At a certain point, Pena gets, this is non-pointed, so it doesn't really matter, I guess, but at a certain point, Pena gets a really nice come-up single. Wagner looked to me like he was intentionally running off the mat.
Yeah.
They reset to the middle. Wagner runs off the mat again.
He makes no bones. Like, that's exactly what he was doing.
Like, it was not, it's not punished, so why not? Why would I stand here? So, like, he runs off the mat twice, and then they reset to the center, and it kind of looked like Pena was just like, well, I don't want to fucking do that again. Just start us standing. Like, what? This is pointless.
Yeah.
Don't give me the leg. So they start saying, which was like another really fucking weird exchange. Like Wagner was doing something that's not illegal, but is like, should be frowned upon at least,
kind
but like
of illegal.
At the same time,
but it's not illegal. And this is again,
right? Yeah,
one of the reasons I really appreciate Wagner is because Wagner's a dude that will find an issue with your rule set and he will make you fix it.
Yeah,
and he's done it for a bunch of organizations. Like, dude, the entire Python smother choke, like the entire community had to come up with a rule for like, can you do it? Can you not do it? And some people you can do it, but like. I really appreciate Vagner Rocha because he's going to look at the rules and go,
I'm gonna fuck with them there.
Didn't tell me I couldn't do it. and then next event, you're like, okay, well, the Vagner Rocha rule, it's like you can't, you have to do this, and like it. He keeps the community honest more so than almost any other high level guy with his rules. And I appreciate it.
So that happens, and then we get EBI overtime. Pena defends the back attack for 3 minutes. Then Pena finishes Vagner with a jaw crush.
Yep. And they both get paid, and I love to see guys getting paid.
Overall, it was just a weird match.
Yeah.
It was weird. I mean, Pena was definitely bigger. I think that played into things a bit.
Oh, yeah. Pena's you think 230?
I would say.
Because Wagner's 190,
190 and he looked smaller.
He looked a bit smaller than Pena by significant weight. Yeah, and again, this was a +9. This was, I think, a +99 match. So, but again, both Pena's under 99 can be under 99. Wagner's under 88 or can be 88. Like we don't have any information about the weights here, but Pena was definitely bigger. Yeah, and then leverage that throughout the match. And in the overtime is where it was most evident because you could see that Pena could just Wagner sitting in Pena's back mount was just like Pena's chest was significantly bigger and could almost wrap around Wagner in a way that we don't see super frequently for positions in overtime like that. Yeah, in open weight.
So Pena takes that one in EBI overtime.
Yep. And that does it for Honor Submission Challenge. Again, like the matchups. The format was a little interesting. Yeah. But I did appreciate the matchups, and it is really fun to see matchups like this. I like seeing Galvao. I like seeing Fabricio Andrey. I like seeing Vagner. I like seeing Pena. I like that we saw some ADCC style matches. Yeah. So moving on to the next one. We're really quickly going to go through this. It's a quintet style event.
Through.
It was the UFC Invitational 2 with no heel hooks this time because Cub Swanson got his leg blown out last time. Which again is that's so this event, the first one of this event, is why we have that rule. Yeah. By the way, if you don't know, so UFC fighters can go do grappling events, but now post the UFC Invitational 1, they can no longer have heel hooks while they are under contract for UFC because Cub Swanson took like a year and a half or 2 years or something like that because he got his knee blown in half because he went the wrong way in the reap, and that's the rule now. So this is the return of that event. We had a bunch of different teams on it. I just really want to talk about a couple of the matches that were really interesting to me. We had Pettis' team win. Pettis' team was Big Dan Minasuri, Cristo Paladedos, Giancarlo Bordoni, and Oliver Taza. Faber's team was Song Yudong, Elliot Kelly, Ryan Loader. James Krause' team was Andy Varela, Joe Selecki, Kyle Bain, and Masvidal's team was Bo Nickel, Mika Coco, PJ Barch. Craig Jones wasn't on there. I'm reading the poster. That
wasn't accurate based on
quintet style. Lots of draws. Yeah. Some interesting matches. In the first round, we had Dan getting a really quick ankle lock of Joe Selecki, which is again his bread and butter and what we see from him. He stays on. In the second round, we had Oliver Taza and Kyle Bain went to a draw. So they're both eliminated. They move on to the next teams. After that, we had Dan Minasuri defeating James Krause via rear naked choke. Dan do big guy stuff and get to that back and be big. And then we saw, I think for me, which was probably the second most interesting match on this card, which was Big Dan versus Andy Varela. Yep. When this match happened, we did not know Andy Varela was in the 77 kilogram division, and Big Dan is the European trials winner for +99. Andy Varela did not. He was quarterfinalist or semifinalist for ADCC West Coast Trials and looked
88,
77.
He looked fantastic at 77.
And
Dan is a 290-pound man.
6'8", 290. I think is his stats. Yeah. Andy Varela ain't that. Andy Varela hits a fucking double leg on Big Dan. And we talked about his wrestling, like how good his wrestling looked at 77.
He looked good at ADCC.
The fact that he can do that makes me go, oh, that answers a lot of questions about like how game you are, how tenacious you are, and who you can double leg. Like, if you get in on anyone's hips at 77, they're not going to stop you. Because if you can take down a guy that, even if, again, Big Dan's not very, very hesitant and has been hesitant to stand up a lot. I was kind of surprised.
He's more of a guard sitter. And
he's a guard sitter and then looked, and he scooted forward for earlier matches, like in later matches in the card. But to stand with Varela and have Varela put him down like that was very impressive. Just size alone. Like Big Dan's a trials winner, no slouch. To be able to do that was really hammered huge stock into Varela.
Yep.
Getting that invite of like, oh yeah, he is going to give whoever he runs into at 77 a fucking problem.
Yep.
And I'm about it.
Yep.
He looked good. Varela controlled a lot of the match, played diligent on top, really put big pressure on Dan. It goes to draw, but huge stock in Varela here. Anthony Pettis' team advances there because draw, both are eliminated. And team A1 versus Icon, we had Elliot Kelly versus Bo Nickel, goes to draw. Bo Nickel just made his MMA debut, knocked a guy out in like 34 seconds.
Oh.
It's on UFC. If I pass, it was on.
For those of you that don't know, Bo Nickel is a world-class freestyle wrestler.
Yes. He fought Gordon Ryan.
In a weird rule set.
In a world rule set. I was there. I was Matt side. I have some great photos from it. I did a bunch of interviews for BJJ Fanatics as part of that event. They flew me out there to cover it and do interviews and all that stuff.
It was an interesting thing.
It was when we were trying to put wrestlers in mixed rule set for about a year and a half,
which was a weird time for the sport.
Before everyone kind of went.
Fortunately, maybe fortunately is not the right word. We did get to see Gordon Ryan use a brilliant strategy of Bo Nickel's not going to be able to resist fucking suplexing me through the earth to get to the ground. And so with the weird rule set, this is an old match, but with the weird rule set, Gordon couldn't get to the ground without wrestling or Bo taking him down, and he needed to get to the ground.
No,
he wasn't
couldn't.
to sit.
You couldn't pull, and Bo didn't have to engage him on the ground.
Yes.
So Bo basically had to take him down,
and then Gordon could just be on the ground.
Yeah.
And Gordon wanted to be on the ground because that's where he was going to win. And so he like turned his back
and donkey guarded
him. And Bo was like,
and
well,
Bo's
I can't fucking resist.
It was like
this.
soup, and just lifts. And I have a great. They are 3 of the best photos in jiu-jitsu I've ever taken. Those are my pictures. Have you ever seen those pictures going around of the suplex when it's bad like that? Those are my pictures. I took those pictures.
That's cool.
Yeah. So those are the proudest pictures I have ever taken.
Those are good pictures. So in this, Bo Nickel.
Yeah, he goes to draw.
That's how we end up here with Bo Nickel, someone that you might not necessarily know super well in the jiu-jitsu community, being in this high-level event, because he is an absolutely world-class wrestler that has moved into a little MMA and has dabbled in some grappling stuff.
We saw his guard a little bit later, and it doesn't look like it used to, which is super neat.
We
had J-Rod versus Song Yadong. J-Rod looked really good in that match. Gets a rear naked choke, but just like the positional control he had on Song Yadong was great. And it was fun. I was watching this live with some of the friends, and I was like, "Man, Song's probably having a great time." He's like, "I'm not getting punched in my face right now," because Jared was on his back, and he's like, "I'm not getting punched right now." Like he's just having a good time. We had probably my favorite match on the card: Rafael Domingos versus J-Rod. I don't want to recap the whole match. J-Rod was in some danger here a couple of different times with Rafael. Domingos, you don't know Domingos, but you haven't covered him in a little bit here. Old school black belt. Been around for a long time.
He's really competitive and good he's still good, clearly.
Still very good. He looked better than anyone has looked against J-Rod in a long time. Almost beat J-Rod twice. Almost subbed him twice. Yeah. And it was J-Rod fought back from huge adversity to be able to take this to a draw. Again, had his own submission offense and offense at the end. But go back and watch this one. It was worth the money. Yep. I enjoyed the shit out of this match. And I'm curious to see if we're going to see Domingos in more stuff after this, kind of like taking on a kind of greener, newer guy. There's a trials winner in Jay Rodriguez. Yep. Was very, very impressed with him as always. Go back and watch his matches on Shugio. Really fun match. I think it's the last time we probably ended up covering him. Maybe on a Fight to Win or something like that. But in like big coverage with Shugio. Next match we have Enrico Coco versus Ryan Loader. Also goes to a draw. And then Team Masvidal advances. We have Team APFC versus Team Icon. First match, we have PJ Barch versus Christos Paladinos. Barch has a really great transition to the guard and then to a rear naked choke on the back. Next match, we had PJ Barch versus Giancarlo Bodoni. Bodoni looked like a monster here.
Yes.
Initially, at the beginning of the match, he hits a really good foot sweep on Barch and then controls a lot of the guard of Barch for a long time. He passes, I think, once or twice. Controls Barch, again, does a great job looking for ankle locks and sweeps, and like foot locks. Gets Bodoni over at one point. Bodoni kind of like accepts a like an inverted kind of like knee shield X guard sweep to kind of like rides it over to the guard. Match ends in a draw, but Bodoni, again, has been a little hot and cold here and there, engaged with Barch, and looked like he wasn't going to have a problem. Again, Bodoni is at 88. 88. Barch is at 77.
Yeah.
So not going to meet in ADCC unless they do absolute, but very, very important. Bodoni, this is the Bodoni that I want to see at ADCC here.
Yep.
And
he's had some shining moment. I think the pans he looked really good at recently.
He's had a bunch of matches where he looks amazing.
Yeah.
He has had some other matches in Nogi and some of the super fights where he's looked good or like has looked like has not performed like he has performed at those other events. This was not one of those performances. Bodoni looked good, dominant here. Next match, we had Jay Rodriguez versus Oliver Taza. Oliver Taza gets an ankle lock here, and there's no heel hooks in this event. So it's normally where Taza, if you know Taza's game, goes outside, rolls through, hits the heel hook. He has an ankle lock here, and goes belly down on it. Jay Rodriguez taps, and in the broadcast, the event just cuts. And then you immediately come back into the next match, and there's no like walk-on. It's like, ooh, and
something happened. Maybe.
I don't know if Rodriguez got injured here, and that is my concern.
Right,
I'm
that's the nightmare scenario because
you
get your first shot at getting into the ADCC. And
both of these guys are 77.
Yep.
This is a match that we could see at ADCC. These are also guys that train together.
Yeah,
a lot.
Did train together for a long time.
It beat at when they were under DDS, and I think so. I actually don't know. Taza's the one guy that I don't remember where he went. I don't think he went to B
Taza
team.
Didn't go to either,
and he didn't go to New Wave. He went to TriStar.
Yeah, he went back to TriStar.
Did he go back to TriStar?
That was my understanding. I think he's back in Canada somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. And Taza was Crelinsten stayed with B team.
Yeah,
and then Taza did his own thing, and he was the one guy of that team where I went, oh, that's really interesting that Taza's always sort of been kind of on his own train, kind of doing his own thing.
Yeah.
So it wasn't shocking. It was just interesting, but has definitely been in the room with J-Rod for a time. I don't know.
I would imagine.
I don't know if they were in Puerto Rico together. Like I don't
know if was J-Rod in Puerto Rico?
I don't know. I think he was there at the end.
Yeah.
But I don't. Again, that timeline. Like I don't know how much crossover, but I'm pretty sure they have trained together before.
They definitely have trained with the same people enough that stylistically they would understand what the hell's happening with the other person.
So I do hope that we do not have an injury for J-Rod here.
I hope not. Yeah.
Because I don't like that broadcast cut.
Yeah.
And so, but again, Taza wins by ankle
we
lock.
Missed one match. Big Dan over Enrico Coco.
Oh yeah, Dan threw.
Not over. But
Dan fucking threw Coco. Coco's like my size.
Yeah.
And Big Dan, you saw Big Dan impose. Like he stood with Coco. He hit two like big Uchimata. Like just chucked Coco. He like shoved Coco and like lifted him off the mat in a shove.
Yeah.
Imposed his size, used his size in a way that we've always sort of wanted to see from him versus some of the smaller guys that he goes against. And it was like, I'm sorry, it's Enrico Coco, but I appreciate that we could see him do that. When he did put Coco down, had a problem getting past his guard, and Coco has a really dynamic, really good guard. But it was nice to see Dan like really impose on the feet here in a way that, just again, to see him be able to do that in a competition is nice versus guys that in absolutes, I would hope he'd be able to leverage, 140-pound advantage on. Because we've seen him sit before. It was nice to see him not do that here and change it up a little bit.
But that ends with a draw.
Oliver Taza and Bo Nickel. We see some guard play here from Nickel for Taza, and Taza just couldn't crush through his guard, and that was sort of, for me, again, Nickel's not in ADCC, but that answered a lot of questions. It was like, ooh, Nickel is in MMA, but he's still doing grappling, he's still doing jiu-jitsu, and has obviously developed his guard a bit in both of those endeavors. And so it's cool to see a super high-level credentialed wrestler come in and like do jiu-jitsu and like be willing to play off his back versus a guy like Oliver Taza and have Taza like not be able to just blast through his guard. We've seen wrestlers do it before and just like their guard gets cut open.
Yeah.
So to see like, ooh, he's really putting in hard work into that guard. Great use of frames, great use of the knee shield. It was great to see. Team Anthony Pettis takes that win, and that is our recap of the UFC Invitational 2. I like that they do it. It's fun. There's some fun matchups. I do like that they had more grapplers on this one than like former fighters. The last one was just former fighters, which is fun. But this one, there are definitely some.
This was a grappling event, not
Yes.
a UFC event where there's no punches.
Yes, yeah, and I like that. Again, we talked about wanting to see more of it from the first event. I'm very happy they ran a second one. I enjoyed watching it with the homies, and it was fun.
Yeah.
So that does it. I think we have 2 events next week. I'm not sure which ones we are going to cover. We have Subversion Trinity happening next week on Flow, and we have Carolina Combat League in Charlotte happening on Flow. We may have a fight to win, but I think, we do have a fight to win. I don't have any cards or any announcements for who's on that fight to win yet, so we'll definitely be covering fight to win next week. But I don't know of any entrants that are in that yet.
Yeah. No clear announcement on that yet, at least that we've seen.
Yep. So that's all I got. I'm trying to see if there's any other events that I'm forgetting, either flow events or fight pass events or fight events or something like that that I'm forgetting.
Those are the only ones that I know of.
Yeah, I think so. We just had Polaris, just had Grapple Fest recently, so I would see another card there, but that's it.
Yep.
So what do you got planned for the week? Anything fun on this nice 4th of July?
4th of July was hectic. My mom is in town next weekend, so just kind of
fun.
putting shit together.
Awesome.
Having her visit for the weekend.
You seen the house yet?
Yeah.
Awesome.
She had once Easter.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Any plans for the weekend? For the week?
No, just going back to work.
Yeah.
And just generally kind of like chilling, trying to finish up the podcast set.
Yeah.
Really is the big thing. And then I'm really starting to finalize a lot of the ADCC travel. We have flights there. Tickets are good now. We've had tickets for almost a year. Yeah. Close to a year now.
Yeah, because you had to get them right away.
Yep. And then so we're finalizing some of the last kind of particulars about like really just kind of what I'm going to do on vacation, because we're getting there on Monday. Then we're going to be there to the following Monday. So just sort of deciding.
I'm not going that long.
But I'm going to enjoy like a vacation there because we went to Vegas for trials and I just didn't really have as much time as I wanted to kind of like actually see Vegas, because it was really 3 days of like just trials related stuff. And then we did a 4-day trip. So it was like, it was like we actually got there the first day of trial.
You're flying, you might as well take a couple days.
Yeah, and so like actually go and see some stuff in Vegas. So, and again, anyone have a gym in Vegas that we can drop into, let us know. Yeah. That would be. I want to do a little bit of training out there, so that would be nice. I'm probably gonna ref the Open on on Thursday there. I'm doing a concert on Wednesday. Gonna look at times for some fights maybe if there's possible, because UFC and Canelo are in Vegas that weekend. So I don't think the timeline will line up, but
I don't think so.
But again, that's this week of like starting to figure out like, okay, what can I do? Yeah. What can't I do? And then what do I have to like figure out the time?
How much money do I set aside for booze?
Pretty much. It's how much money? Yeah, dude, Vegas is expensive.
I'm gonna set aside $300 and get 3 whole drinks.
Pretty much. You're got like probably 8 drinks. Vegas is expensive, so it'll be fun. I got anything else, Jack? I got nothing else. You got
nothing else. No.
Right. As always in the show, I'm your host Maine, the co-host
Zach.
We got the Grappling Rewind. To the mat, whatever it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.